Hello and welcome back to the Heap. This is Dishelved with Adam White. I look back at my first video on the Sparrow and I guess I come off as kind of an Oscar the Grouch of BookTube. Maybe Eeyore would be more appropriate, but I'm going to endeavor to add a little more life to my posts from now on. But like I said, I'm new at this, so you'll have to get the hang of it with me. I do highly recommend The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell, though. Today I'm going to be talking about John Carter of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Uh, I'm talking about the first three books of the series, of which there, I believe, is 11. The first three were A Princess of Mars, Gods of Mars, and The Warlord of Mars. The first one, A Princess of Mars, came out in 1912 and was a big hit. It was his first published novel. It was published in the pulps, which a lot of stuff, especially genre fiction, were during that time, and I love the pulps. So I'll talk about a lot of pulps in the future. Um, it was his first published novel. It was wildly popular, which called for the sequels. I personally read it on Kindle um, because you can get all of them on Kindle fairly cheaply, and it's a great way to read his books. Plus, like I said, I've got stacks of books all over my room. I don't have room for anything hardly more, so anything I can get on Kindle, I get on Kindle, with a few exceptions. I'll still get a physical book if it's something important. Uh, a Princess of Mars, a man named John Carter, who was a Civil War veteran for the South, is chased by Indians and ends up in this cave where he passes out and wakes up in a spirit form of some kind and is transported to Mars that way. And he's physically on Mars then. Uh, how this happens is never really explained. That's one of the few things that I have that I would point out is a little strange about these stories is that you never really do know how it is he gets to Mars. You just kind of have to accept it, which is fine because it gets you right into the action. He meets the Green Martians first, and the leader of their sect, which is Tars Tarkas, who's a great character, really fleshed out pretty well during the stories. Um, he gains their grudging respect because they've never seen a man of his color before, because most of the Martians are red Martians. They look human, but they're red. And you'll find out in the sequels that there's other colors of Martians too, but none of them are Caucasian like John Carter is, so he's an enigma to them. Um, he meets the captured Deja Thoris, who is the princess of Mars essentially, and she is captured by the Green Martians, and he of course takes a liking to her because she is naturally the most beautiful woman on the planet, and so that would naturally gain his interest fairly quickly. Um, he ends up uniting the red and green Martians against a rival city to Deja Thoris' city, and which is a feat because they've never been united against anything. He becomes a known hero to the world. I won't give away what he does at the very end, but um, he's definitely a hero. He's looking to be a hero. He wants to be a hero. He was born for it. He's always showing off his skills as a warrior, uh, which leads into the Gods of Mars, which is the second book, and so far of the three, my favorite. He is transported back to Mars, and it details his search for Deja Thoris, but he also comes into contact with people who are thought to be gods of Mars. And he uncovers their whole society and who they really are and who the gods are that they worship, and just in general, he kind of debunks the myth that the red Martians have about these other races. He confronts them, and it ends up in a cliffhanger ending, which leaves you to know there's definitely going to be a sequel this time. He then leads directly into Warlord of Mars, which continues the story from Gods of Mars. John Carter and his prowess as a warrior is on full display. He confronts yellow Martians now, because there's just about every color of Martians on the planet, and he comes to discover. He also unites some yellow Martians that are against the ones that are in power. Again, there's certain myths that are around these yellow Martians that the red Martians have and the green Martians have, and he kind of plows through these notions and ends up uniting people again. He's a very good warrior and a skilled negotiator too. Um, he also is fighting a death sentence because of what he discovered on the Mars. The guy that's in charge of the red Martians at the time is not a good guy, and he wants John Carter put to death. So he's fighting against that the whole time as well. And it's showing how, even in the face of that, he does the right thing and goes after these yellow Martians. Now, Edgar Rice Burroughs was a great writer. Uh, I mean, I know some people say, well, it was the pulps, and he had some repetition in some of his stories, and he used certain tropes over and over again, and there is some of that, but he really was a good writer. And he wrote adventure stories, and again, you can see I'm consulting my notes. Um, he wrote lots of different stories. He wrote the Tarzan stories. He wrote Carson of Venus, Beyond the Farthest Star, which was his unfinished science fiction, which I read they released in its full form recently, which I may do a video on at some point in the future. He had the book At the Earth's Core, which was the first of the Pellucidar stories. All had sequels. Everybody wanted sequels to his stories. He was a prolific writer. He wrote his first story, I believe, when he was 36. I read a biography about him recently. Another thing I might do is a video on as well. But so he came to writing late in life. Not late, but later than what you would think. You think most writers would start in their early 20s, but he really came to it later. And he had a lot of fun. There was some similar plots. Honestly, John Carter's probably my favorite of his stories, even more than Tarzan, which the Tarzan are really good. But I really, really like the John Carter stories. He was possibly one of, if not the most important writer of the 20th century. His stories influenced everything that came out in science fiction and fantasy, and a lot of adventure stories as well. He really had an impact on everything. You can trace everything: Star Wars, any fantasy, uh, any science fiction. You can all trace back to his stories, a lot of them to John Carter. Uh, lots of great stuff came from people who really admired and read a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs. Um, all of it came out of him. John Carter was a great character. He had a great character arc over those course of those three novels. Um, a lot of pulp heroes were kind of one note, but you saw a progression over the first three, and the others I'm sure as well. But I'm doing a big read of Edgar Rice Burroughs' novels, so um, I'm going to get to the other ones. There may or may not be videos on those, but I wanted to do it on these first three because I'm really, really a proponent of you reading these. Um, there are more Mars books, I believe 11 in all. Like again, I said, I'm still reading them, but I highly recommend them. Um, I recommend Edgar Rice Burroughs in general. Any of those other series I mentioned, especially Tarzan, uh, are really good, really interesting stories, and great for people who like adventure, science fiction, fantasy, or the pulps. Um, I love pulps, and I'll discuss more in the future. There was a Disney film about John Carter of Mars, which was based loosely on A Princess of Mars. It came out in 2012, which was the 100th anniversary of the book. They decided to honor that by making the movie stupid, is about the best way I can describe it. You may think, oh, I'll go check out the movie first. Don't. There are some things from the novel that would have had to have been changed, which I understand, but they changed things that made the story stupid. And it was not a good representation of John Carter of Mars, so don't watch the movie. It's a shame. It could have been really good, but I mean, the cast wasn't bad, but it was just the script was just no. Uh, so again, Edgar Rice Burroughs, highly recommend them, especially these first three John Carter's of Mars. I like the Gods of Mars the best. It's kind of like the Empire Strikes Back of the John Carter stories. There are more. The next one is Thuvia, Maid of Mars. I'm going to be reading that one next, and I hope that you will give these a shot. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time here at the Heap.